So if you stuck out the previous video past where it normally ends, you would have seen the teaser for today's video where I promised one of two possible crowd-pleasing episodes depending on what happened in the coming day. Well, we are living in the reality where this arrived before I had to start the next video, meaning the other subject that was a possibility for today is getting pushed back to Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that in 3 days because, that's gonna be a special one. Oh, you dear sweet children, you are not prepared for what comes Wednesday. There is no way you will expect what you find, so brace yourselves for that. Before the video starts, if you want a Galvatron, these are very rapidly coming off the Big Bad Toy Store. That's how I got mine. They are on pre-order, but they are coming in so fast that even though I was late in ordering mine, it was only like 3 days before the next batch was in and mine was on its way. To be clear, Galvatron seems to be the only figure currently like this. I've got other Kingdom figures pre-ordered through the Big Bad Toy Store, and I've had them there for longer, but they are still not even on their way yet, and I have no idea when they will be. Also, if you aren't subscribed yet, consider it. But, onto Kingdom Galvatron. And yeah, this is looking really good. If you saw the early pictures of this, you were probably worried about the shoulders, and as you can see, they aren't halfway down his torso like people thought they'd be. No, just like I hypothesized, they are on eccentric pins, which means that they can get lowered if you don't have the transformation right. So, if you find that the shoulders are too low like this, all you need to do is spin the shoulder around. Here, with only one down, and you can see just how big the difference is. The tip of the cannon is basically scraping on the ground. Getting them into the correct position, and it's not much higher, but it still makes a world of difference. Unfortunately, there's a second problem where a lot of these were misassembled. Mine is one of those misassemblies. You shouldn't be able to see these pins poking out of the front if it's put together right. Unfortunately, there's no way to fix this. I thought I'd be able to drive the pin back out and put the arm together correctly, but no such luck. As you can see by the backs of the shoulders, it's a one-way pin. Great job shooting yourself in the foot there, Hasbro. There were 2 ways to make this not a problem, and you chose neither of them. But oh, it gets worse, because the transformation assumes that you actually have these pins facing the other way, since there's a peg on the treads that's supposed to lock into the hole where the pins go. They obviously can't do that if they're facing the other way. So there's 3 different pitfalls Hasbro dug for themselves and then proceeded to fall into with these shoulders. To be fair though, it's not a complete loss like this, since if you do peg the treads in, you lose access to the bicep swivel. It's still ugly when the pin is in front though. But once we're through the shoulders issues, the look of this thing is extremely good. I could complain that the purple isn't the right shade, or that his shoulders aren't painted red on top, or that his cannon isn't supposed to be clear, but I'm not a pedant like that. This is all very accurate if you want accuracy. Unrelated, does anyone think that Galvatron is going to show up in the Kingdom show? Also, does anyone else think that it's a bad sign the Kingdom show is less than a month out, and they didn't show the trailer for it during the trailer reveal stream they held? It's almost like they know they have a huge piece of shit on their hands. At this point, if the show is even passable, I will be astonished. Anyways, figure look good. Figure look real good. But it's got its issues. For starters, I'm one of those rare psychopaths who actually likes the siege battle damage. Here, it's very odd. The purple discolorations look less like they are supposed to be battle damage, and more like they are supposed to kind of turn him into something of a cel-shaded comic character. And, as for the perfect streaks across his shins, I can say that for sure, yeah, they really shouldn't have bothered with that. What would even leave a mark like that? At least with Sideswipe and Hound, the whole fronts of their legs were scuffed up like would actually happen in a fight. I can't even come up with an analogy for what this would look like, it's so unnatural. I should point out that the proportions on this guy look great. So long as you have the shoulders in the right place, there is nothing that looks out of shape on this guy. His legs aren't too long, his arms aren't too short. I mean, they can't really cross his chest, but it doesn't look all that unnatural. Oh, and did I forget to mention that this guy is really big? He's not 86 Grimlock big, but he is bigger than Himboy Cyclonus, and way bigger than that crap that called itself the leader Earthrise Optimus Prime, who doesn't even have the decency to be as big as Cyclonus, a figure in a size class lower than him. I'm so stoked to finally have the big 3 cons from the 86 movie in my house. I've never had a representation of any of these characters, and now I have these ones, and oh my god, they look so good together. Before I get too happy with this thing, I need to crap on it some more. This is me, remember? And I must be my wet blanket self. The fists on this guy are wonky looking. Not only is their design overdeveloped, resulting in weird inset peg holes, but they are freakishly skinny. There is nothing about this transformation that requires the wrists to be so thin. Hell, there's almost nothing about it that requires the hands to hinge in. They could have made the wrists a little wider to get a less freakish fist out of it. Also, this guy looks fantastic from the front, but from above, and he's kind of weirdly hollow looking. It's weirdly hard to convey just how off-putting it is. Also, I'm not putting the back spike up here because that looks stupid. And I would describe the back as an odd clean mess. I know how that's a bit contradictive, but it's nice and symmetrical, while it's also kind of a whole bunch of parts hanging lower than it feels like they should. The cannon does work with blast effects, so if that was a concern of yours, then it should be assuaged. Head is, odd. It's easily the part of him that looks the least accurate to the G1 Galvatron, but it also doesn't look like the dogshit Netflix show. If I had to take a guess as to what they'd change if they do a Netflix release of this, it'll be the head. It's got that weird bullet shape, the crown is totally wrong, looking cheap and flimsy, and feeling cheap and flimsy, so at least that's truth in advertising, and his goatee isn't painted. The head is the most lackluster bit of this figure for me. But that's not to say that I think this is a bad head. Sure, it doesn't look like G1, but not looking like G1 is not an objectively negative quality. I will say though that taking that out as a factor, I do think this head is a bit goofy looking and I don't know why they did this. Did the guy who designed the 86 Blur's head make just the helmet on this? Because despite the goatee being painted, the face is basically fine. I mean, it doesn't look much like the character, but it's not busted like some of the stuff coming out of the 86 line. This helmet is just so strange. It's amazing how good the sculpts and engineering have gotten, but how bad so many of the head sculpts have become. Seriously, look at the 86 and Kingdom figure rosters. So many of them have bad or really off head sculpts, it's embarrassing. He comes with a tiny matrix of leadership. On a huge chain. I assume it's this small and ugly looking because they just wanted to use the same matrix that comes with the Earthrise Optimus Prime to make this part. But man, it looks awful. I have so many matrices now. Who needs another one at this point? At least this one is in a way different, but please, no more. What happened? There are like 10 figures in the last 2 years that came with these, if not more. Just wait a while, Hasbro. Siege Optimus didn't have a matrix and the world did not explode. He also comes with, holy crap! None of the pictures prepared me for how big his revenge guns are. These things are massive. They look so small in the product photography. They are at least 3 times larger than I thought they were going to be. They are like 75% as big as his entire leg. You couldn't make a bigger matrix, but you could make a set of Titanic handguns, and you made them gray and not purple, because why? It's not like you weren't using purple plastics with the rest of the figure. These 2 little nubbins on the ends fit Siege blast effects. A bit loosely, but well enough, though these ones on the sides do not. You can also peg them together top to top because reasons. Why, Hasbro? Why is this a thing you can do? Why have you given him 2 large flattened out versions of his ship in the wrong colors as guns that can peg together to 100% not form a better gun? This is not better gun. This is just thing. Object. Catastrophe of parts. If you set it in the background of a diorama though, it could make a good sci-fi building or power generator or something. You can peg these into the pinholes on his shoulders to assert dominance over Ultra Magnus's pylons. This might be the longest I've ever spent on accessories, and there's essentially 2 different ones. The last figure had like 5, and I spent a collective total 1 second talking about them all. I guess technically I should also count his cannon, which separates into 2 parts. For some reason, the barrel is clear. Why is Galvatron toys having a clear barrel a thing when he's never depicted as having them be like that in the shows? And this is absolutely massive, almost doubling the Siege Megatron's fusion cannon in size. They were smart enough to give Galvatron 2 ports at his elbow to attach this. One on the forearm side of his elbow, and one on the bicep side. The one on the bicep lets it mount higher, and that makes it feel a lot more reasonable in length. The one on the forearm gives him the aim control you'd want, but exacerbates the length. Can't help but feel like they could have solved both problems by just making this cannon a lot shorter. Well, after all that, we are finally on to posability. Galvatron here is nicely above average, though don't get your hopes up too high. This is not pushing any envelopes. Head is average. Shoulders do the thing that you want, but they don't have any kind of butterfly, and there's a problem. Because of where the transformation joints are located and the fact that they have no locks on them, using the shoulder joints will very easily pop off the whole sides of his body from potentially either the top or the bottom of the ribs. It really works if you're moving either direction, especially if you have really tight shoulder joints like mine does. Also, the backpack likes to pop off when you try to hold it from here, once again due to the lack of locks. He's got maximum elbows and wrists that both spin and hinge, which is nice because normally this kind of transformation joint stops you from having both. Almost completely unimpeded hips, normal 90 knees, and a more limited than usual ankle tilt. You can untransform the leg for more, but that doesn't work the best. Though if you need more side support, you can pop this out. He's got mildly articulated heels, but these are very weak, and they actually don't sit flush with the ground when they're fully extended, essentially meaning that he has no heels, and he will fall backwards, so it's annoying to constantly have to correct these. Like I said, he's nicely above average on the posing, but there's really nothing that feels particularly special about him. Transformation on this guy is pretty interesting, very unique, and for the most part fun. Yes, it's a parts former, but what are you going to do with Galvatron's design? It's literally animated to be one. The cannon jumps off his arm and becomes the barrel of his alt mode. The designers kind of had their hands tied. At least it's always supposed to be on him, so there is very little opportunity to lose it. But there is another problem. This does have locks like I requested on the rest of the figure, but I've been monkey's paw again, because these do not want to go into the slots they're supposed to. Why won't they just go into their home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me! Another problem with this is that I'm pretty sure this is the same purple plastic they used on the Beast Wars Megatron, and that stuff is, as I covered, unnecessarily brittle. I'm already seeing stress marks in the plastic on the tabs and slots, so I'm very worried that these are going to shear off at some point and the front of the cannon is going to turn into a floppy mess. The end result is this pretty damn solid rendition of his cannon mode. It looks stupid the way it's meant to be with this strut all the way down, so I extend it back like this, and I find that to be a much more attractive look for it. Though it does mean that you have to futz with the treads to get them to lie flat on the ground. But yeah, this is about as good of an alt mode as I really could have expected, and it's a crime that this came with 2 weird spaceship pistols rather than 1 blast effect for the cannon, so we could have him vaporizing Starscream. None of the other blast effects is impressive enough to work well for that. Oh, and the guns peg onto the side of the cannon. I don't have an explanation. Funny thing about this alt mode is when going back into robot mode, I forgot how it worked and thought that the chest pegged into the front of the cannon rather than the other way around. So it seemed like the most powerful tab in the whole history of mankind holding that in place. I honestly damaged it a little by prying on it trying to get it out. So just remember to take the lid off the jar before you try to separate the chest. So even though I complained a lot in this video, I'd say that this is a figure with a great many flaws, but even more positives. Or perhaps just significantly larger positives. Nothing it does is even close to a deal breaker. The head is probably the worst of it, followed by how the sides want to untab in robot mode, followed by how hard they are to tab in cannon mode, followed by how worried I am that the plastic could break in short order, but there is no evidence that that will happen as of yet. And there's even more than that. But what the figure does well, it tends to excel at. With the exception of the head, it looks like Galvatron. The transformation is really good, the alt mode is really good, the posability is really good, and it justifies being a leader a lot more than most other figures do at this point. Sure, there are still figures that do that better, but when I look at this, I don't think, that's just a Voyager with extra crap. No, it's a small leader. I think if you want a Galvatron, or just a solid figure, there is no need to worry this won't satisfy. I'm not going to say you need one, but I think you will be pleased if you get one. And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.